welcome to episode 21 of Talent Hub TV. We're here at Dreamforce with Source Consulting. Thank you very much for coming on the show. Really excited to kind of run through the Source story and find out a bit more about who you are. And welcome back to Hiral, the second time, first person ever to be on Talent Hub TV twice. So welcome back and thank you. Look, we'll dive straight in. You've obviously recently become a Salesforce partner. And I think there's lots of people that one day aspire to be a Salesforce partner and have their own business. So what's the process to become a partner?
So it's not a hard process, but for us anyway, it was a long process. So you do have to have a couple of requirements that are mandatory to be able to actually apply. One of those is you have to have at least 2 certifications, Salesforce certifications. So I think we had that covered. But one of the ones that we didn't know about, we needed to have a website. Okay. So when we first applied for it, we didn't have a website. So we had to quickly put one up in a day or so to be able to actually apply. Sure. So it's a lot of documentation. You've got to answer a lot of questions about Salesforce, about your knowledge of the industry. Once you've applied, your local Salesforce office will call you. We'll do a sort of a due diligence, ask you questions about your journey, what you're planning to do and things like that, sort of to vet before it goes to legal in Sure. San Francisco. And that's where it takes a bit longer. Obviously, they're one office for all partners around the world. Yep. They do due diligence on every application. And once you get welcome into the partner family, you do need to do things like having a very good code of conduct that all your staff need to adhere to. It needs to be linked in some ways in the Salesforce Partner Code of Conduct. Sure. And you have to have a way of registering that all the staff has read that. Sure. And they make you do a trailhead on ethics, on how to, to sell and having integrity, because it's the Salesforce way. In a way, as partner, we are representing Salesforce. So, but all in all, it's not a hard process. You just got to be a little bit patient to, Sure. to get on board.
Yeah, because we see a lot of partners popping up, and some that haven't got the background that you all have in terms of how long you've been in the ecosystem and the certification. So I've always wondered if it's something that people, do you have to be embedded in the market to become a partner, or can you just spin up a business?
You don't need to. Obviously, the requirement of the 2 certs is quite important. But what's really interesting now is once you become a partner, you get an App Exchange page. And what they've done on the App Exchange, they really revamped the way they present consulting partners, because they've got the expertise. So you can actually go in and see, okay, this, Source has got 10 certified consultants, but they've got 90 certs, Sure. So you can, and they can see actually which certs, which knowledge you have. So I think they've really revamped the App Exchange. And for future customers, it's really good to go on there, see the reviews, see how many certs, what they tend to be specializing in. So I think they've done a really good job in that.
Sure. So I think I know who put together the application. But the 2 certifications obviously weren't a problem for you.
No.
I think you've got 14, 19, 14, and congrats for picking up a couple at Dreamforce. What value do you put on certifications as a business?
Well, actually, Ben, I'm glad you asked that, because we put a huge value on certifications. As you know, because I've read a number of your LinkedIn articles about different ways that people have gotten certifications. There are different ways that you can get certifications, some of which involve a lot of studying and prep work and really learning about the platform, and some of which have some other methods that people use Sure. to get certifications. So we have a high value on certifications for those people that have gone through the process to actually learn the material. Mm-hmm. We believe that there's a lot of things that you learn while going through the process of doing a certification that you might not learn if you don't do that. Sure. Sometimes there are little nuances of the platform. For anybody who's done the admin certification, there's things like territory management, there's things like collaborative forecasting. There's probably a list of 10 things on the admin cert alone that you learn while you're studying for the cert that you may not use on every single project and you may never use. But we believe that the only way to learn some of that stuff is to go through the process. The same is true for all the development certs. The same is especially true for all the designer certs. There's a lot of things that I believe people learn as they go through that process, that's one of the only ways that you can learn. So what we do is we put a high value on certifications. All of us are certified, obviously. As you said, we've got a few between us. All of our staff are certified. We have a plan in place to promote people getting certified, and we also put a high value on it while we're interviewing.
Sure.
So if somebody's got a certification, we'll ask some questions to make sure that they got the certifications the right way.
Yeah.
Because that's what we promote.
Sure. And as a business, I think obviously it's important to have complementary skill sets. So you're all from different backgrounds, all have different skills. Where I guess how do they all tie together, and how much value did you put on the different skills that you each bring to the table?
Right, as in when we actually three of us got together, we obviously had some vision in mind. All of us love Salesforce platform. We are very passionate about Salesforce platform. We are like-minded. We are customer-centric. So those values definitely resonated between three of us. But apart from that, we obviously come from the delivery background, but we get different skill set onto the table. For example, Albert comes from technical background. He has his own he had his own company in the past as well, so he gets that particular skill set to the table. Martin had about 20 years of financial services experience. She has a lot of experience in business operations as well.
Yeah.
So that's a different skill set that Albert and I don't have.
Sure.
And then I come from sales and delivery operations background. So even if we come from delivery background, we definitely get a lot of different skill sets onto the table as well. And it's good to actually partner with like-minded people as well. And during this journey so far, we have actually uncovered a lot of our hidden talent as well. For example, you see these jackets, and if it would have been just one or two of us, it would have been difficult for us to get into those creative sides and coming together and bringing up ideas. For example, these logos, these jackets, you would have seen the sauce bottles on in one of those events.
As a matter of fact, Ben, we would like to present you with this.
Thank you very much.
Bottle of sauce.
I'll definitely be using this. So yeah, thank you.
The creative and
during this journey, we have uncovered a lot of qualities that probably we would not have uncovered in our day-to-day jobs.
Sure.
But it definitely has been a really good experience in terms of like-mindedness and values.
Sure. So whose idea was it to bring these on Monday night to the Cloud Crowd event?
I think we all had, so ever since the name of Sauce came out, we always knew we would have sauce bottles.
Sure.
But I think it was a really last minute thing that on a Friday, Albert's designing the logos and designing the ingredients at the back and all that, and getting a company in the US to print it and getting people in the US to order the sauce bottle. So it was all a last minute, but I think it paid off because it put a smile on a lot of people's face. So that was really, really fun.
I saw quite a few pictures being taken, so I think it worked.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've seen is that, or I've heard, is that there's a push for people to have like industry-specific target markets or products, or like cloud and Salesforce clouds. So is that something that you believe in, or is that something that you're doing?
So we definitely come across that particular discussion a lot when we talk to the Salesforce AEs and Salesforce staff. What we definitely believe is it is beneficial to have that industry focus or niche industry skill set. But what we also think that it's good to have industry skill set, but industry know-how. But we come from Salesforce platform background. We have a strong foundation of Salesforce platform. We know what Salesforce platform can do across various industries as well. So definitely it is beneficial to have that industry specific niche knowledge, so that you can talk to the customers in their language, their lingo. But at the same time, you should not be pigeonholed into one specific skill set or industry. So that, because what I have seen in the past as well, when you have a broader knowledge of various industries as well, you can actually bring best practices from one industry, for example, financial services, a lot of use cases in financial industry can actually resonate with government agencies as well, and vice versa.
Sure.
So it's good skill set to have in terms of broader kind of industry experience. But what we believe in is the Salesforce platform knowledge is key for any successful project as well. Because once you have that foundation knowledge of the core platform, you can innovate a lot. And Salesforce itself is innovating so much on the platform, but the framework or the high level framework of the foundation or the platform is still the same.
Sure.
All the new clouds are still built on the same core platform.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And obviously hiring is going to be important to you as time goes by. And I think lots of consulting businesses or lots of any business struggles with hiring and attracting Salesforce professionals. So what's your view on hiring for experience or hiring for attitude and kind of potential?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Ben. And for us, really, it's about passion, right? When we meet with prospective employees, one of the things that we look for is how passionate are they about platform and about what it is that we're doing. Experience is important, having certifications and all those things are important, but somebody really needs to have passion in order to have truly successful deliveries and achieve good business outcomes. If anybody was able to see the talk yesterday between Obama and Mark Benioff, one of the things they talked a lot about was leadership and how do you identify sort of leaders of leaders? And I believe the same is true with passion and looking for Salesforce talent. When I joined Salesforce ecosystem, I knew nothing about Salesforce, but I had a lot of experience in technology and solution architecture. Picking up the Salesforce bit for me was easy, but I had the passion and I had a good, strong background. And so that's really what we're looking for with people, is that desire to learn the platform. And but passion really is the most important thing. When you brought me to Dreamforce a couple of years ago, the event ignited for me a passion in the platform and all the people that are using it, and we want to do the same thing for other people. So we're very happy to bring in people that are new to the ecosystem, people that have a desire to learn. One of the things that I've observed in the past is I've had the privilege of working in a previous life with some graduates that are just coming straight out of university, and I've seen grads do some things that in 6 months that some people have not done in 5 years with the platform.
Yeah, sure.
And so for us, it's really about identifying who are those people going to be and attracting them to the company.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think it's obviously there's one thing hiring juniors, and if you don't have the structure that you have and the experience that you have, then you can be setting them up to fail. But because you've got the experience and years and the I guess war stories and scars from successful project delivery, you can help those people establish themselves and grow. So talking of project delivery, how do you set a Salesforce project up to be a success?
So I'll take that one. So I'm talking about passion. I'm super passionate about delivering successful projects. And everyone's going to tell you, you need governance, you need change management, communication. Yep, everyone says that's got that. But one of the most important thing for me is really collaborate with the business from the get-go and really identify the business goals, right? What are they trying to achieve? And then take them on a journey with you. And I've talked about playback. I've done a presentation about playback. That's where you've got an audience that's going to start listening, and you're going to start educating them on the platform, helping them understand what Salesforce can bring, but always tying it up back to their goals, right? So that it's really taking them on a journey and not being afraid to challenge them, right? If your current process is overcomplicated, we're going to have to customize the platform, educate them on what impact that will have. Sure. And help them to say, you know what, we can tweak this here, we can tweak this here, and then showing them on the platform. Let them log in, play with it, right? Yeah. Because over time, like I say, on the journey, people will be, they'll increase their own knowledge of the platform. They'll be more confident in using it. And then when you get to testing, they've seen it. They've walked through the whole process, right? So I think that's really, really important. And it's the whole collaboration and making sure that the business goals are not forgotten throughout that project. And you have to be flexible. So you have to plan really well in order to be flexible, because if you understand your plan, it allows you to be more flexible and change your plan slightly. If you don't have a plan, it's really overwhelming when you have all these change coming through. So I think, these two guys will say planning, Martin, but it's true. Like if you have a good plan, you can adapt a lot better with customer. And again, just keep their business goals in mind and always reiterate them, because not only the project team will know about them, but the business will understand. Everyone in the business will understand where it's going.
Sure.
So I think that's that most important thing.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else you would add?
So I think right from start as well, as in we as a kind of the business sponsors or project sponsor, they need to kind of lay out that vision and strategy for the entire program as well. As in most of the projects that we are doing are not kind of short-term projects. Those are long-term goals that the business wants to achieve. So as Martin mentioned, you need to be focused on business goals, but at the senior level, they need to kind of set that vision and strategy overall for the business in terms of KPIs that they want to actually kind of get out of a project or an engagement. At the next level, even the governance layer as well, you need participation from the customer side to have a successful project. As a customer, you can't just expect the partner to deliver the whole project without actually engaging the customer. Sure. So you need to have that involvement, that feedback loop with the business constantly, not only with the business SMEs at the ground level, but at the senior exec levels as well, to kind of have that vision, to actually see through that vision in terms of the implementation, in terms of the future phases as well.
So do things change as scale? Like, is the process and formula for delivering in a small org and small business the same as delivering in an enterprise government environment, or do things change?
So I think the elements are the same. We establish certain patterns, and those patterns don't change, but the way that we implement them will vary based on the size of a project. But I think if you wanted to sort of boil it down, it would be to establish early what it is that we're doing, to gain agreement on what the KPIs, the outcomes, and those sorts of things, to have a very rigorous playback system where we bring people, as Martin said, on the journey, let them see early what the platform is, so that our requirements can sort of take a certain shape, and then test. Right.
Sure. So let's talk about Source, because I'm interested to hear about the story, the journey, and a bit about what makes you different from. There's a range of partners in the market. So who are Source?
So Ben, we have a lot of things that go into the secret sauce, and I think not a lot of companies will give the exact recipe for the secret sauce. But one of the things that I'm particularly passionate about is, a lot of companies have principles and values, and those are all really good things to have. But we wanted to take it a step further. To practice medicine, for example, you have to take an oath. And it's based off the Hippocratic Oath, which was developed by Hippocrates some time ago. I highly encourage people to read about the Hippocratic Oath if you have not heard of it or come across it before. But it was developed in the early days of medicine because it was an emerging profession. And when you go see a doctor, you entrust your life to the doctor. They're going to treat you. They're going to treat your health. They're going to give you something. You're going to take it. And hopefully it's going to make you better, right? You don't want it to make you worse.
Sure.
And so, for example, one of the most important things that the Hippocratic Oath states is first, do no harm, right? We shall not make things worse than they already are. We try to make them better, but under no circumstance do we make it worse. In the olden days, doctors would practice in people's homes, and so they'd see the way that people live. And so privacy was a very important part of the Hippocratic Oath. Because medicine was so new, part of the Hippocratic Oath is saying that anything that you learn as a part of your profession, you will share with other people, and you'll help grow the knowledge and make the industry better. And so when I looked at that closely, I said, why don't we have that in technology?
Sure.
Could you imagine the world if every IT professional had to take an oath that had some of these things in it? I think it would be a little bit of a different world that we live in.
Sure.
And so that's one of the things that we do differently at Sauce. We've set up an oath recently, and we're in the process of putting it in place. And it has a lot of those kinds of values in it, embedded, so that when we bring on employees, we ask them to take that oath. And when we go to a customer and we say, we'd like to do your project, we can say, these are the things that are a part of our oath.
Sure.
It might mean that we're not the cheapest, but what it also means is that we're not going to sweep things under the rug, hide them in the code, and then somebody finds them 3 years later when they try to implement a change. And suddenly, something that was done 3 years ago comes to light. Oh, well, we can't implement that change because a shortcut was taken 3 years ago. And we see that a lot in the industry, and we don't want to do that. So that's, I guess, one of the things that makes us a little bit different.
So quality is at the kind of center of the business. That's the kind of core.
Yeah, certainly quality, but more than that, doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Right. As usually, it's pretty obvious what the right thing is, but sometimes we see that companies just don't do it for various reasons and constraints. We like to think that we're different in that area.
Sure.
And one of the things that tie up with what Albert is saying is that we've got delivery-led sales as opposed, so we don't have salespeople. So all three of us come from delivery background, and when we have conversations with clients, we're very transparent. We help them understand the platform and its limitation as well. And we're not afraid of saying, actually, this piece might not be Word going onto Salesforce because you'd have to over-customize the platform and things like that. So is really having this delivery to collaborate with the client from the get-go and manage expectations and really help them through that journey, that roadmap that Hira was talking about, is because we know the platform so well, we're able to really guide them through that and being really transparent in terms of delivery and what can be delivered within the but you can also help them, us, by not being pure sales. We could say, what's your backlog? What's your roadmap? And really help them put it together in small incremental delivery to really try to get value as quick as possible. So there's all these things that we sort of do naturally in a delivery role that we're bringing to the table when we speak to client. So I think that's slightly different from what I have seen in the past.
Sure. And the third thing that we want to kind of differentiate in the ecosystem is we want to kind of leave that legacy, be it at the customer level, be it internally within the organization. What we have seen in the past, as Martin and Albert mentioned, that we come from delivery background, and whenever we bump into people would actually kind of talk to us about projects that we delivered 3 years, 5 years ago.
Sure.
So we want to leave that sort of legacy with our customer. As Albert mentioned, if you would be writing a piece of code, you need to think of future, because 3 years down the line, we might not be around. But if there's customer who's reviewing the code, they would still see those best practices implemented.
Yeah.
They can actually kind of use those best practices to enhance their platform themselves.
Sure.
So we want to kind of leave that legacy. We want to be very flexible with the customers in terms of our engagement models, in terms of our interactions. What we consider is Salesforce is more of a democratic platform. If you have 50 seats, if you have 300 seats, you still get kind of access to all the features of Salesforce platform. Similarly, for us, we want to be flexible with our customers as well. You can be a 50-seater customer, you can be a 1,000-seater customer. As we mentioned earlier, methodology is going to remain same. It's the process of delivering would change.
Sure.
But across the board, we want to have that flexibility for our customers.
Sure. And how are you ensuring best practice? So you're growing your team. How are you coaching and guiding new employees on best practice and getting them through the kind of Source way?
Yeah. So that's, to be very frank, still kind of work in progress. We do have kind of coding standards. We do have kind of Lightning web component development standards. So all those kind of technical sort of guidelines are in place,
Yeah.
but the soft skills in terms of engagement model, in terms of our methodology, when they talk to the customer, what should be the kind of process, that's still kind of work in progress. But that's what we are going to kind of have, including SOS oath, SOS way of working.
Sure. Yeah. And go. But also, I think it's so I see myself more on the functional side, right, than the technical side. So always making sure that developers that work on project really understand the consultant way, and so it's the communication between the team members and really understanding that, you know, when you, for it's the best example I always say is when you create a new object in Salesforce, right? If you give a ticket to a developer, we need this new object, yeah, that's going to get done, right? But it's go the extra mile to make sure that the search layouts have been set up, the list views have been set up with the same field and having consistency. Think of it from a user perspective all the time. And I think that's where we're really pushing our developers to start thinking this way, because we want the best, you know, delivery possible to our client. There's nothing worse when you search for something and you only see an auto number pop up. You've got no information, right? So always think of the customer and the user it has to be at the forefront of your mind when you develop.
I would just add to the Martine and Hiral's answers with collaboration, right? The way, especially as a growing company, the way that we ensure that that we're doing things the right way is we learn from each other. We collaborate with each other. 5 years ago, we might have said, well, we'll write, you know, a 50-page Word document, maybe 10 years ago, that has all these best practices in it. But nowadays, the reality is we have great tooling that we can collaborate with each other. We can ask questions, sharing knowledge, whether that's through lunch and learns, whether it's through an informal thing like having drinks after work with colleagues and saying, hey, you know what I learned this week? I learned that, you know, those sorts of things. It's just about collaborating and sharing information.
Sure.
And that's, I think, the most important way that we can help raise the bar.
Sure. And I think in the conversations I've had with you around the kind of people you want in the business, having fun is also at the core of.
Look at the name. So I know you did ask where the name came from, and it's basically we just want to make it fun and not take ourselves too seriously, and also being able to play on words with the word.
Yeah,
sauce.
we want our customers to kind of think of us when they have lunch and dinner. So if you have a sauce bottle, you can relate to sauce.
Everywhere you look, you're thinking of sauce. So we're right at the tail end of Dreamforce.
Yes.
And you know, it's been a great week. But what are the key takeaways for each of you?
Well, I'll start. So me coming from a statistics and maths background, I was so excited with what's coming with Tableau. I think that's an amazing acquisition from Salesforce, and Tableau's always been a really good tool for making data available to business users and dumbing it down a little bit without having, you know, the statistical knowledge. So I think that's going to be super exciting to see how they're going to integrate that with Einstein Analytics, but also potentially with Lightning Dashboard and where it's going to, you know, take the product to. So I'm super excited about Tableau.
Sure. My key takeaway from Dreamforce was the Trailhead Go mobile app. People are now going to be hooked on to the app like anything, because I was just waiting for some keynotes in the queue, and I was watching people already on Trailhead Go. They were actually kind of doing badges and certifications on the app. So I think it's going to be definitely a differentiator and a disruptor for learning new things. And especially now, Salesforce is now kind of joining hands with AWS and getting that AWS training on Trailhead as well. It's definitely going to boost the ecosystem. You can actually learn about multiple technologies, but still use Salesforce as a platform, which is definitely a key differentiator, I would say.
Yeah, that's good.
That's right. I guess there's a lot, right? There's you know, those things. There's the MuleSoft has some interesting things going on. I love the roadmap sessions where they talk about what's coming in, you know, Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and the different clouds. But I guess personally, we talked about certifications earlier. I'm really excited about the new architect certifications, and I'm looking forward to getting those so that I can try to catch up to my colleagues with certifications.
And also being a partner, they've got a new partner enablement program, and they will have courses on the partner community available just to partners for our enablement. So I think that I can't wait to go in there and have a look what's on offer and see what we can roll out to some of our staff as well.
Well, thank you for the secret sauce. I'm going to enjoy that, and thanks so much for coming on the show. And really great to have you, and best of luck. I'm sure it's going to be a great success. So thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.